Sup guys, I decided to post a little video, been lagging, but I did want to talk about carb cycling real fast. And I get a lot of questions about this, and it's one of those that I understand if you have like a thyroid problem or some other problem like that, you can be carb sensitive and whatnot. So then you have to talk to like either your doctor, or you have to make sure that you're slowly adding the carbs in the right way. So I can't really talk on that too much because I'm not a doctor, and I know a little bit about thyroid problems, especially with women. That's one of the main problems why a lot of them dip down the calories so low is because they want to drop the fat. But you need you need carbs for energy. So it's just like, what are you gonna choose? So carb cycling is very simple. All it is one day you're going high, and the next day you're either dipping it down low or you're keeping it to a moderate rate, and then the next day can be high again, and maybe the next day lower. I mean, what we basically do on workout days, we want to keep our carbs high because we need carbs for fuel. So we always want to keep carbs high. And carbs always get a bad rap, but you guys have to remember that for your brain to function, you need carbs. So the people that always talk about you have to eat low carbs and all the time, those people are usually pretty crazy because they can't think straight because they need to be fueled by some carbs. Carbs fuel you. I like to use the analogy of a car when it comes to a lot of stuff because it's easier for people to figure out. When it comes to carbs, and especially how carb cycling works, is let's just say you fill up your car full Monday. That's a workout day because you need a lot of carbs for it to run because you're going to be doing a lot of stuff that day. Tuesday, you might not be doing much stuff. Maybe you might be doing some cardio. So then you're going to keep your carbs lower. Well, you wouldn't want to keep your carbs lower on a cardio day, but let's just say hypothetically that day you're not going to want to eat high carbs. You want to keep it to a moderate level. Like the workout day you were shooting for in the 300, 400, 500 range, and then the moderate day you want to keep it at 300 to maybe 250 in that range. I mean, these are just numbers I'm throwing around just to say. Okay. You're throwing it around like that. So then you still have plenty of gas in the tank and you can still move, but you don't need a full tank of gas again because you're not doing as much movement. And then the next day you can go back to being high because you're slowly starting to dip down on the fuel that you're using. If you guys can understand that, or if I don't sound like I'm talking gibberish. But basically, one day high, the next day doesn't have to be low, like to a point of getting like 100 grams or something, because that could physically hurt you and you could be using muscle as energy. You guys have to also remember when it comes to carbs is that carbs, as I said, are used for fuel, and this fuel is also used glycogen, sugars in our bodies, all that other stuff. Glycogen is a big key for working out, all that other stuff, so your body can use it in an effective way. Woo, almost messed that up, but you need glycogen to run, to fuel yourself, and to go. So you want to have as much carbs as fuel so that fuel can be used. Basically, think of carbs like this. If you eat a lot of carbs the day before, like if you're a marathoner, you want to have a lot of carbs the day before because you're going to use that energy the next day. And then as a marathoner, you would keep on. You would then, during the race, because you would use up so much of that fuel, you would need to have some kind of fuel in between each other so many miles. I've never did a marathon yet, but that's one of the things for marathoners because you run so many miles, you have to keep fueling up because you're using so much energy. And if you don't, what happens to a lot of people, especially if you watched a marathon before, when you see some people at the end of a race and then they look like they're dead, they can't move, it's because they haven't been fueled up right. The glycogen in their body is like spent. And they've used up all the glycogen and sugar in their body. So just keep that in mind. Compared to like if you're running like a 5K, you don't need as much fuel to run that. It's like the difference between driving around your town that's maybe like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 miles. That's more like a 5K where you don't need as much fuel to run, and you can last on a lot of fuel compared to if you're like for me, if you live like where I live at in the Central Valley, and then you need to go to LA, that's a 6 hour drive. So obviously you're gonna drive there, and you're gonna need to get more gas on the way to get back. So always remember that carbs, fuel, we want to utilize that fuel and maximize that fuel so it can be good energy for us. So keep that in mind.